Hey guys, and welcome to the channel. I'm Zemo, the Dad DPS, and welcome to my video about the public test server, and it's more specifically about the legendary crafting system changes that are due to be coming to Fallout 76 in, I want to say the near future, but let's be honest, it's probably going to be a lot longer than that. Now, if you enjoy videos like this, don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe, and let's get on with the discussion. So, the PTS. Now, I will start this off by saying all of these changes that we know of and have seen are not set in stone. These things are not necessarily going to come to pass. There's been many things that have hit the public test server that have never seen the light of day. So the reality with this overhaul and change is that this is all, to an extent, partly speculation and partly just trying to figure out how it's going to work in the long term. Now, the first major change that they've done to the legendary system is that legendary items are now able to be scrapped at your workbench. And this yields a couple of different things. The first is legendary particles, and we'll get more into them in a second. The second is legendary modules that have a star prefix to them, such as unyielding, faster fire rate, or, weapon weight. And what you can then do with these is attach them to your armor or weapons and replace the 1-star, the 2-star, or the 3-star on your weapons. You're able to essentially craft the specific weapon that you want at the workbench without having to randomly reroll it. And the last thing you can get from scrapping legendaries is the plans for crafting these legendary mods that you can attach to your weapons, and then you use your legendary particles to basically create these. I'm assuming that you also can use modules, like actual script modules, to craft these as well, but on the test server I scrapped over 300 items and didn't get a single plan. They are incredibly rare, as are the actual mods that you can attach to your weapons. You will be scrapping a hell of a lot of stuff before you get what you want, and this is the first kind of hurdle with it. While it is more guaranteed RNG with crafting and making weapons, it is still going to be a grind. You aren't going to be able to do this and just get everything you want and need right away. So it is going to be a massive grind. You are going to have to scrap hundreds, thousands of items for you to get what you want. But unlike the current system, it is going to guarantee your crafting is going to be successful eventually. Now, to delve further into the RNG aspect of this, when you go to scrap a piece of armor or weapon, there will be 1 to 3 prefixes on there. Now, if I was to scrap a bloodied 1-star weapon, then there is a chance that I will get a module for bloodied, or the plan to craft the modules for bloodied. Now, if I was to scrap an armor piece that is unyielding, AP regen, and weapon weight, I have the chance to get a module of any of those free mods, or the chance to learn any or all of those plans. You can learn multiple plans from the scrapping of one item, but again, it is incredibly rare, so the chances of you getting all free learned in the one go are very slim, but still possible. And this is the reality, that you're going to have to scrap literally thousands of things to get anything. This is not, once again, going to be a quick process. It is a lot of RNG and a lot of grinding. My advice: stockpile legendaries if you have a mule account or a mule character that you can just dump every single thing onto. But obviously only stockpile the legendary prefixes that you specifically like to use, like explosive, faster fire rate, unyielding, bloodied, AP regen, those kind of things. Don't be stocking up on, I'm trying to think, limb damage if you're not intending to use it, essentially. So this isn't obviously the only change. The next one is legendary cores. Now, from what I've seen on the test server, legendary cores have ceased to exist, and that's because they aren't really used in the crafting system anymore. As a result, all your legendary cores that are in your inventory, it brings the question, are they just going to disappear, or are we going to be compensated in some form for them? Are they going to be converted into legendary modules? What's going to happen with those? I really don't know. And if anybody has information on that, or has any information on what Bethesda said about it, leave that down in the comments below. On top of this, we have the fact that events quite typically drop legendary cores. Now, I didn't get a chance to complete any events on the PTS because it was being very buggy, problematic, and I didn't have a lot of time because it was on holiday. So I only really got a chance to do stuff with the crafting itself. And the question I ask about that is, instead of legendary cores, are the events now going to drop modules instead? And the problem with that is modules do have weight. So are modules going to be adjusted? Are they going to lose their weight that they currently have? Because you can only carry a certain amount of modules before, you can't carry any more. That is a fact on every character. You can have a limit on the amount of modules you have. Of course, you could have 5,000, but at least they didn't weigh anything. So it brings up the question of, are modules going to be adjusted and changed to reflect what's going on? And there is more kind of issues involving modules. The first part is that, in theory, if they aren't changing events to drop modules, then it is significantly harder to get a hold of them on the PTS and potentially in this future patch. Because if you don't know, you can buy legendary modules from Purveyor Merg at the Rusty Pick, and currently they are 50 scrip a piece. However, on the PTS, they were 100 scrip a piece, which means you can get half the amount of modules, which essentially means you can get 5 modules a day from Mergs instead of the 10. Now, when it comes to crafting costs and things like that, they have increased quite exponentially. And I'll go into that in a little second. But the whole point is that modules are harder to get, with the exception of one situation, and that would be expeditions. So if you go into expeditions, you can get anywhere between 1 to 2 modules. You can also get script, you can also get legendary weapons. It becomes a whole farming thing, and I think that's going to be a big, massive thing in the new system. But currently, it brings the question of, how are we going to get more modules? Are we going to get them from events instead of cores? And if we are, like, great, that solves the problem of them being more expensive in the Rusty Pick, but it doesn't solve all of the problems involving them. Now, I need to reiterate, look into the camera and say, we don't fully know how this system's going to work, because modules, we don't know how easy they are to get. We don't know if there's going to be additional methods to get them. There's only speculation and thoughts going around my head. It's a very in-progress situation. So there's no point panicking or getting upset about these things when the changes haven't came and we don't know when they're coming anyway. But the point I would make about the crafting system is, in the current one, if I were to take a non-legendary item or a legendary item, and I was to re-roll the effects on either, I could add on 3 legendary effects to the non-legendary item, or change the effects on an actual legendary item for 4 modules and 5 legendary cores. Now, in the new system, you cannot randomly re-roll all 3 perks on an already existing legendary item. You can only do it on a brand new weapon. So if I were to craft a Crusader pistol, I would then have to re-roll it. Now, this also changes the legendary crafting for a lot of weapons. There are some weapons that exist at the moment that you can craft them for a very cheap cost, and I'll use Secret Service armor as a good example. You can roll a bunch of Secret Service armor for 1 module currently, and you will get a random 1 to 3 star from it. That is going to be going out the window. You will craft the armor, and then you'll have to roll legendary effects onto it. And this is where the module problem comes in. To randomly re-roll, or well, randomly roll effects on a legendary item, you need 10 modules for 1 star, 20 modules for 2 star, and 30 modules for a 3 star. Now, the problem with this is that that is a 7.5 time increase if you were to roll a 3 star item. Now, the best way to do this might be to roll a 1 star and then add mods onto there that specifically you want. But what I would say in regards to that is that when it comes to an already existing legendary item, I cannot randomly re-roll its effects. If I am to do anything to an already existing legendary item, I have to add specific effects onto it. They cannot be randomly re-rolled. So if I were to create an item that was from scratch, let's say I re-roll a random 3-star. That's 30 modules already. Now, if I were to then add a specific 1-star on there, it would then jump up to a cost of 40 modules to create that weapon. If I was then to mod it again, that would then be 55 modules. And then if I was to mod it a last time, it would be 75 modules. The problem with the legendary crafting system is that each time you mod and change a weapon, the amount of modules used to change that weapon goes up and 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 up until I think I've been told 1,000 modules to change this weapon. On top of that, when you add a module onto a weapon to change the legendary effects, it binds it to your character. It no longer becomes tradable. Therefore, it is not something you could sell. It's not something you can trade on. It completely binds it to your character, and it will never leave that character until either you scrap it or you script it. And this is the kind of thing. When it comes to the crafting system, you are looking at, in theory, it'll take you 75 modules to make an item perfect. That is going to take a lot of days if you're just scripting. If you're just scripting, that is 5 modules per day. That is, oh god, I'm trying to do math. 6 is 30, so that'd be 12 days, 15 days it would take you to make one item perfect. 15 days. If you're only using script. Now, if you're using expeditions, that's going to be a lot quicker. You're going to be able to grind stuff out very easy that way. But it's going to take you a long time if the way of getting modules doesn't change. If events start dropping modules, it's going to be a lot easier. You know, if you're getting, instead of 8 cores, 8 modules from Arrow, yeah, you're going to have no problem doing this. But this is where the system kind of, I'm not sure about it yet on that basis. I think we need more information, and we need to know, how am I getting the modules? Bethesda, how are we getting the modules? What are you doing to change that? That's the main thing I want to know about this. And if they give alternate ways of getting modules, you know, a system where I can trade in, you know, bullion for modules, or, God, what are they called? Stamps for modules. That would be fantastic. It would up the amount of things that I can get and do, and there'd be lots of ways of getting it. Currently, it looks like it's going to be expedition time. You just spam expeditions every day, doing all that to craft what you want. But it is going to add more value to legendary weapons that are already god rolls, because a god roll that you've found is sellable. A god roll that you've found is tradable. A god roll that you've found is swap overable to your other characters. So when it comes to the crafting system, yes, you will be able to get the better items and the better armor that you know, will absolutely use and love and be able to do a lot of things with. But it does make it so that you can't trade things. So if you have too many weapons, too many items on a character, it is going to stack up over time and potentially become a problem. They probably should increase the weight of your stash at some point. But this is the thing about the legendary crafting system. It's all in theory and in progress. There are a lot of problems with it currently, because when it comes to the crafting system, they've opened up more diversity in what you can put on. Now, what do I mean by diversity? Now, there's a lot of weapons and a lot of gear that are going to have effects that they either never had or used to have and no longer can have. And the first thing I'd use an example is Quad. Quad will be able to appear on a dragon or a black powder item. Last Shot will also be able to appear on these items, which then gives, you know, rise to some wacky combinations. Explosive is going to be able to appear on energy weapons. Currently, from what we've seen on the test server, however, that doesn't work. And the reason for that, I think, is mainly because legacy weapons. Now, if you haven't played the game for as long as I have, legacy weapons were explosive energy weapons that had absolutely busted and broken damage and completely obliterated everything you pointed them at. Bethesda's probably not fixed that yet, and they're probably tinkering around with it, but they want to bring those types of weapons back so you have more customizability and more kind of things to use. And this is the thing about the current system on the PTS. This is the bare bones. This is not the finished product. And I'm going to be honest, I don't expect to see this in the next patch. I certainly don't expect to see it this year, and I certainly don't expect to see it before the goddamn ghouls come into the game. I think that is going to happen before this does, because they are still playing around with it. And this is essentially an alpha like test of the new crafting system. I think there's a lot of things they need to hammer out and work. They need to think about whether they've made modules too expensive. They need to figure out if the crafting cost is too expensive, if they need to lower that, if they need to up it, if the chance of getting the legendary effects are too low or too high, the chance of getting the plans are too low or too high, the amount of, you know, particles that you get from scrapping a weapon, is that too low or too high? You know, there's a lot of things they need to hammer out with it. And I think when it comes to anything anybody says about the new system, anything anybody's seen about the new system, you need to take it with a pinch of salt, because it is not a finished product. It is not what we are going to end up with. And the reality is they might not ever bring energy explosive weapons back because they can't get it to work, or, you know, they put it in the back burner. Either way, this is going to take a while, and it's going to be a long road, because again, some things that get to the PTS never make it to the live server. Now, the next thing I would like to do is ask some questions and give some of my suggestions to Bethesda on what they should change with the Legendary system. So, we'll start off by asking a couple of questions. I mean, first off, what do you guys think of the new crafting system? How do you think it's going to affect your gameplay, and how, you know, you work in 76? And I would also recommend that not only leave a comment down below in regards to that, but leave comments on any resource you have to Bethesda and the team working on Fallout 76. Feedback is very important for these kind of things. The more feedback we give Bethesda on what we think of these changes and the new system, the more hopefully effect will have on getting it made more ergonomic and more usable for us. I mean, my concerns with it are obviously the module cost. I also would say that I really wish that they kept the old system and had the new system side by side, where you could do both. Like, I could randomly re-roll stuff for relatively cheap, but I could also specifically add on modules and things like that. I really wish that both of these existed in tandem. You can still make random weapons, but it's going to be expensive as hell in theory. So that's my main concern about that. Then there's also the fact that they are changing some legendary effects. Now, I had a theory they were going to do this anyway, and I'll go into what my thoughts about that are in a little second, but currently they're changing like how Vampire works in tandem with multi-shot weapons, essentially. So they're nerfing that in a sense. They're also changing the general scope of damage on enemies and enemy damage resistances. They are reworking the combat system in tandem with reworking the crafting system. Now, what I would say about if they're reworking the crafting system and legendary effects and the combat system is they need to focus some of their efforts on legendary effects that are, for the most part, seen as useless. Now, if you think of legendary effects like mutants, gourmets, suppressors, stalkers, all these effects don't really get any light of day. People don't want to use them because they aren't as good as alternatives. I mean, for example, junkies, great damaging effect, but it has a massive downside. And on top of that, if you're using junkies, why not use aristocrats instead? It has the same raw percentage with none of the drawbacks. So there's a lot of effects in the game that are like this. Gourmons has 24% damage. Mutants has 25. Now, mutants, there is no drawback to it, and all you need to do is put on, you know, mutations, and you're now able to do 25% more damage. Gourmets, you need to make sure you're fed and drinking. It has a downside, but is worse than something that technically doesn't have a downside. It's very imbalanced. A lot of these effects need their damage boosted. Like, for example, I would honestly argue that Gourmets needs to go up to 75%. Junkies maybe needs to go up to 75%, or, you know, even 80 to 90% and be in line with Bloodied. There's a lot of effects in the game that need to be buffed and boosted to make them more viable in the general use of weapons. And this is the problem with Fallout 76. There is a massive bias towards using Bloodied as the supreme overlord of damage. But there are other alternatives that, in theory, could be really good. I mean, for example, anti-armor in the new patch, once the new system and the new crafting comes into place, is going to be a lot more effective on bosses because their armor is going to be more significant. So you're going to essentially do more damage with anti-armor. I think a lot of other stuff needs that rework and needs changed and fixed and made so that they are viably, you know, reasonable to use. There's a lot of useless effect currently in Fallout 76. And I hope that is not the case in the future. I hope they change these things and make at least like gourmands, junkies, aristocrats more viable on every type of build. So my final thoughts on it are this is going to change everything. The fact that I've been stockpiling weapons for the entirety of this game, you know, things that weren't quite perfect, I was like, I'll put this aside, maybe I'll find a use for it, maybe it'll get changed in the future, maybe this will happen. This brings those weapons to the forefront. A lot of them are going to be usable for, at the very least, scrapping to get the modules that I need to craft better weapons, or to turn into better weapons. And this is the thing about it. There's a lot of people that have a lot of random junk that they just won't give up and won't part with. And this is going to allow us to turn these things into something great. You know, armor pieces that you were like, oh, it's just so close to being perfect, but not quite. They will be perfect now. There's a lot of different things and a lot of things that are going to make a lot of people happy. But on the other side as well, there is a lot of things that need changed, a lot of things that need fixed, and a lot of things that aren't quite there. This is going to change the economic landscape of Fallout 76 because the weapon mods that you can learn and craft, or that you can, you know, get from scrapping, are tradable. So they are going to be big ticket items. If you manage to learn the plan for unyielding, for faster fire rate, for explosive really early on, you're going to be in demand. There are lots of factors and lots of things here that we don't fully know yet, and this patch is going to potentially expand out and affect a lot more than just what we see. I still think it's a long way off. I still think that it's not oven ready. It's not ready for the dinner table. We need to give feedback, get things fixed. They need to overhaul certain legendary effects to be far more useful and far more viable is the wrong word. Everything's viable in the game, but viable is probably the best word I can think of. There's a lot of things that need to be changed and fiddled around with. And when it comes to it, like 1-star legendaries are going to have value again, because if you've got a bunch of 1-star unyielding things, scrapping them to get unyielding modules or scrapping them to get unyielding plan is, you know, completely viable. You know, you could then use that to make some money in the game. There's lots of different things and lots of factors. 2-stars are going to be incredibly valuable because explosive, faster fire rate, a lot of the best effects are in that middle slot. So yeah, I'm excited. But I don't expect this any time soon. I'm expecting at least a year before we see this patch potentially come out. And I'm going to be honest, I expect us to be ghouls before the new legendary crafting system is made. As a result, I think you're still going to have to craft weapons, craft armor in the meantime. But when it comes into game, yeah, the RNG system is going to be archaic and potentially not worth using. But I'm still going to do it. I'm still going to do mercs. I'm still going to do the rusty pick and do stupid things because that's what I like doing. I like testing weapons. I like playing around with things. I like rolling the dice and seeing where the chips lie. Whether I'll be doing that with random crafting rolls and weapons will depend on if the expense of it is lower or as high as I think it is. So we'll see about that in the future. But in the meantime, we're going to just keep on trucking, keep on doing what we're doing, and yeah, wait for this new change with bated breath. But again, I don't expect it soon. Either way, guys, that's my thoughts. That's my ideas and different things I've been saying about this. Again, leave comments down below about what you think about this new system, what you think is going to happen, what you think is going to change. Definitely like the video because it helps me bring more videos and more content to you, and subscribe for more content from me. But with that, I'll catch you all next time in the wasteland.
Through the dark, moonlight's dimly shedding, a shadow creeping. Feel your hearts entwining, a twisted mind, seeking prey to devour. In the dead of the night, he gains more power. His bloodshot eyes, the fire burning within, a predator lurking ready to commit his sin. He moves in silence, you can't hear a sound, chasing shadows, hunting till you're found.